Hi, everybody. Josiah Gilliam here, Executive Director at Pump, and we're back with another community partner highlight about our Science Chilled and Distilled series, which we've been having a lot of fun with the UPMC Hillman Cancer Center. And I'm honored to be sitting with Dr. Ron Buckanovich, who's going to talk to us a little bit about his work and journey and about the upcoming event. Dr. Ron, thank you for being here.
I'm excited to be here. It's always fun to be able to share the science that we do.
We appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get into medicine and what brought you to the work that you do today?
So, fun fact, when I was an undergraduate, I once swore I would never go to medical school. It was a very competitive environment taking those classes, and I thought I was just going to be a researcher. And I told my mother, you couldn't pay me to go to medical school. And then later I found I really loved the science, human science, and I love interacting with people. And ultimately learned about this program called an MD, PhD, where you can do both. Kind of, you be a physician and you do some research. And I ultimately got paid to go to medical school. And so that's how I got into it. And then I still thought I was going to do this just for my love of science. I was going to learn about humans because it would make me a better scientist. But then when I got into medical school, I just fell in love with it. I just absolutely found both the science and the human interaction just overwhelming. And I wouldn't want to live without it now. So now I have a perfect mix of I see patients, I get my hugs and tears and interactions, and then I go back, and that really motivates me to go back into the lab and try to make things better for them.
Very good. So where did you go to school?
I went to school at Cornell. I was a New Yorker, so you could go. Cornell has a kind of an in-state program. It's kind of a state school if you're a New Yorker, and so it was a lot cheaper for me.
Sure.
I grew up in a very blue-collar family, so we literally second mortgaged the home so I could go to state school. And so I was very fortunate that my parents did that. And then from there, I got a full scholarship to go to medical school at Cornell and Rockefeller for my MD and my PhD in New York City. And then I spent 8 years in Philadelphia finishing my medical training. These things go on forever.
Yeah.
I did residency and fellowship, then in hematology oncology. And yeah, that's where the training in theory stops, but it never stops.
Sure. So you mentioned you did an MD PhD. How did that tack on additional years? Like, how was that structured?
Yeah, so that tacks on, it becomes a 7 to 8 year program.
Wow.
The idea is you can take some of your research time and medical time and some of them are overlapping. And so you could combine them and kind of make it shorter. So the average PhD these days is 5 or 6 years. And in medical school is 4 years. So I did mine in 7.5 years.
Wow.
And so you save a little bit of time. But you got to really, really want to do it because it's a really long road. I didn't have my first kind of full professor job till I was, I think, 40.
Yeah. It saves a little bit of time, but still a lot of time put in.
A lot of time and tons of hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
I trained in the days when there were no work caps, so we did 100-hour weeks.
Wow.
Nowadays, that's all much more regulated and it's a much better life. But we worked really hard, but I also loved what I was doing. So in some ways it didn't bother me.
Okay. What brought you to Pittsburgh?
So Pittsburgh was, I did my early career work at the University of Michigan. And in some days it was just kind of time to move on. And we're looking for really, so I'm a physician scientist, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to move my work from the lab into the clinic. University of Michigan was a great place for the basic science. It didn't have the clinical volume of what I needed to do some things I wanted to do. One of the things I really wanted to do is be involved in what's called a Scientific Program of Research Excellence, or SPORE program. And Pittsburgh has that volume and capacity and excellence to do that. And so we were at a stage in my career that I could move and also was desirable enough that I could look at a lot of places. Pittsburgh was a perfect mix for us in that it was really good. My wife is also a physician and a scientist. And so but she does very different things. To find a place that was a great fit for both of us narrowed things down pretty quickly. And Pittsburgh was just that. It's been a really good fit. I've been here 8 years now. And it's been such a great fit. Just outstanding clinician partners that I needed. Also incredible basic science, that wedding. And fortunately for us, we came. It took a few years. There's only 5 SPORE programs in the country, and we were able to get one. And so with Dr. Edwards, I'm co-leader of the ovarian cancer SPORE here at the University of Pittsburgh and the Hillman Cancer Center.
That's a wonderful story. So, so tell us a little bit about that. How do you describe your work to those that aren't familiar?
So my work comes in 2 halves. So there's the very basic science stuff where we're trying to understand the basic underpinnings of cancer. But when you understand how something works, you can then figure out how to mess it up, right? And how to kill it. And so we've really been doing that. And then when you make those discoveries, you then need to find typically partners in pharma who have the drugs or some of the items you need to then move that into a clinical trial. And there I need clinical partners. I can do a lot of that, but I can only do so many things. And so it's great to have clinical partners like Dr. Edwards, Dr. Sarah Taylor, Dr. Alex Oldaway. I think people don't realize how amazing Pittsburgh is in far as a medical center and basic science. I think that, I always think of Pittsburgh, was a coal town, right? But coal under pressure turns into a diamond, right? And when all the pressure of the economic pressure of steel collapsing, all those things, Pittsburgh was really reborn as a diamond in this kind of med ed tech kind of field. And it's just such great partnerships here for me to do all the things from the bench all the way into the clinic, and then take what we learn in the clinic and come back and figure out if it did or didn't work, why. And so it's this great cycle and great partnership to be able to do that.
You mentioned the research that you guys have been doing. Tell us about how that's structured.
Yeah. So the research is a great mix of using patient samples and then bringing it back to the laboratory. In the laboratory, and when I say we do research, it's a whole team of folks. So much like raising a kid takes a village, doing good science takes an entire team. So I have a group of varies between 8 and 12 people at any given point in time, with trainees coming in. But we have postdoctoral fellows, people who've done their PhD and need to do kind of more training, with kind of required by the system right now before they can go on and become a professor themselves. We have graduate students who are developing their PhDs, all the way down to high school students and undergrads. And some of that is teaching others. So we teach the high school students so that hopefully they will grow up and be the person who makes the next cutting edge discovery. But then we have that whole group of people, research assistant professors, and they do the work. So I work with them. They think for me, they think with me, and they do a lot of the hands-on work that really make the science happen. And so I'm forever indebted to that team.
It's cool to hear about. We talk a lot about workforce development kind of in the region, and there have been a lot of companies and organizations that have put in a lot of effort to reach, younger and younger, right? You mentioned you have some opportunities with high school students. What is the pitch, to them? You mentioned maybe making the next cutting edge discovery. How would you address them to say, consider this as a career path?
Well, I think that science is exciting, right? So somewhere along the way, you want to be motivated and excited by something. But, so that's part of the pitch. I will say that, the high school students in the region are fantastic. There are a couple of really good programs for high school students, both via Hillman has what's called a Hillman Academy, and McGee Women's Research Institute also has a high school program and an undergraduate program. And so they're often over the summers, and there are so many good students. And it's a shame we can't take more, but people who are interested should look into that kind of sometime in the early spring and apply, because they're really fantastic programs. And you get an opportunity to work with people across the spectrum in science. It doesn't have to be basic science. It can be epidemiology. It can be, more medical. And so there's a full spectrum of really great research offered. And it's a great way for students to try it on for size, right? See, would you like this, right? Because there's some of it when you're in the class studying biology or chemistry, some of it's very theoretical. And I think that a lot of people, I'm not as much of a theoretical scientist as I am I want to know, does my idea work?
Yes.
Right. I have a friend at CMU, and he's a theoretical neurologist, and he can just think about things. And I'm so jealous because I got to go test it. Yeah. Right? I need to know. And this is a chance for people to try that on.
I love it. In general terms, how optimistic are you about the direction of the science and the care? We've heard some very exciting things in this series. It seems like there is some optimism. Lots of challenges, of course. How do you feel about that?
I will say I'm incredibly optimistic. So when I work with the fellows, I say that their lives are going to be so exciting moving forward. So when I was in the first 15 years of my career, I think we had one new drug approved for the treatment of ovarian cancer. And in the past 5 years, we've had at least a half a dozen.
Wow.
And what's on the horizon, it looks so much better than even what we have now. There are drugs that are in treating. When we treat patients early phase, you don't want to hurt anybody. So you often treat patients who have the worst prognosis. And so you don't expect the drugs to work great. You just want to see them work somewhat. But these new drugs are working great in patients who otherwise would have very poor prognosis. Between immunotherapies and the targeted therapies, something called antibody drug conjugates, there are so many new treatment options out there that are just blossoming. When I started treating patients with ovarian cancer, the median survival, so half of patients made it about 3.5 years and half didn't. And so some lived longer, but a lot didn't. And now that number has slid way down to kind of over 5, which doesn't sound like a lot. It's only 2 years, but that means some patients are living 15, right? Even with what we would call bad cancer. I have a couple patients in my clinic who had cancer that they should have, had I met them 10 years ago, they would have died within 3 months of diagnosis. And 2 of them with metastatic recurrent cancer were treated with immunotherapy in these cases, and their cancer basically melted. And 2-3 years later, they're not even being treated anymore, and they look cured. And those patients were patients that wouldn't have survived more than 3 to 6 months.
Incredible. It's so exciting to hear about. So we have an event coming up on the 23rd at East End Brewery, where you're going to talk a little bit about this. Give us a preview of what folks can expect if they come see us at East End Brewery.
So I'm going to talk a little bit at East End about kind of some of the real basic science stuff too. One of the things that's really fun is being able to take a tough basic science concept but then move that so that everybody can understand it, right? Science should be understandable. You don't have to know all the nuts and bolts, but it should be understandable. So I'm going to talk about, one of the things I'm going to talk about is this concept of quiescence. And so quiescence is this idea that when cancer cells grow, so cancer cells have been bred, if you will, to grow very quickly, right? And all the chemotherapies we've developed have been developed to kill fast-growing cells. So if you think about that, have you known anybody who's ever gotten chemotherapy?
Yes.
What happened to their hair?
Yeah, lose their hair.
They lose their hair.
Yeah.
Because hair is fast-growing. That's why we got to get it cut every, 4 to 6 weeks or however long, right? And so fast-growing cells die with chemotherapy. But when they stop getting chemotherapy, what happened?
Starts to regrow.
The hair grows back.
Yeah.
And so that means that there are cells that were resistant to chemotherapy in that hair, even though it's a fast-growing area. And what we now know is in the hair follicle, there are cells that grow slow. They're the stem-like cells. They're the ones that make the whole hair grow. And because they are slow-growing, they don't die with fast-growing cells, with fast-growing therapies that target fast-growing cells. And you can think about like a bicycle. Think about a wheel spinning very, very quickly. And if you just jam a stick into the spokes, right, that cyclist is going to crash and die, right? And that's kind of what we've developed our chemos to do, is to be that stick we're jamming in the spokes. But if you're a bicycle that's barely moving or not moving, you put the stick in the spokes, it's just going to stop moving, but it's not going to crash and die. And that's what those cells do. And when the chemo's not there, they sense it's not there, and they can speed up or make daughter cells, which will then speed up and grow, and they'll stay there. And so what we've been trying to do is understand those quiescent cells, those slow-growing cells, and figure out how do we kill those. And we've got some really cool findings that indeed they have Achilles heels, right? Things that we can target. So if now we could target that with a chemo, something that's killing fast-growing cells, and a drug that kills those slow-growing cells, now the cancer may not come back. And that's one of the things we're kind of really working for, is how can we eradicate those slow-growing cells.
Very good. Okay, so we hope that people will join us at East End on the 23rd. Free to attend. There's a Facebook event page set up. You don't need to register, but it gives us a sense of how many people to expect. So we have refreshments for people and all of that. And Dr. Ron will be there to talk about these concepts, but also meet and greet some of the people there. Anything else you'd like to share with folks about what they can expect or why they should join us?
Well, I think, again, if you want to learn some basic science, and I'm hoping I can communicate this well.
Yeah.
I grew up very blue-collar family, and when I went to do my PhD, I would come home, and all the Chevy workers that my dad worked with, they would say, "Okay, Dr. Ron, tell us what you're doing."
Yeah.
And I had to learn to communicate neurobiology, molecular neurobiology, with the guys who drove forklifts or guys who worked on the line at Chevy. And so I'm hoping that I can do that for everybody who's there. And if you've got questions, things that I'm hoping I will find a way, a metaphor, something to kind of communicate that so that we can all understand. I'll give a little teaser if I have time. I'm also going to talk a little bit about obesity-associated endometrial cancer.
Sure.
We have some really exciting new evidence of how we know obesity increases risk of endometrial cancer, and we think we know one of the major drivers of the ones that's causing deadly kind. Some endometrial cancer you can cut out and be cured, but some, for some reason, act a lot more like ovarian cancer and are deadly. And we think we've found one of the critical pieces, and again, an important way to target that. So we're hoping that's going to be something new on the horizon for us.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Ron, thank you so much for your time and for what you do, and we hope to see people on the 23rd. In the meantime, thanks for checking out this video, and we'll see you next time.